so we can be sharp on the policy demands we have. And we have a youth program now with over 36 interns. paid interns that are doing their Yes to Youth campaign and working on those demands as well. So I'm really grateful for us to be in this space today. We're streaming live on YouTube. If you have folks at home that want to dial in, they can go to the Jefferson Street Missionary Baptist channel on YouTube to view the live stream, right? So we're going to have an icebreaker. I'm going to bring up a couple of our members of the Black Nashville Assembly. Y'all make some noise. I'll have them introduce themselves when they come up.
What's going on, good people? How are y'all doing today? My name is Nick. I am a community organizer with the Southern Movement Committee.
Hello, my name is Ebony. Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday, I'm Drea.
And so what we want to do to break the ice a little bit today, real quick by a show of hands, who all is this like your first BNA event that you've been to, just by show of hands? Awesome. That's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, if you all look to either your left or your right, you may see at the end of each pew that there are some sticky notes, and there are various colors. You may see a blue one, you may see a yellow, you even might see a pink, right? Whatever row you're sitting on, the color of that sticky note, I want you to find someone in an alternate row with a different color, and I want you to go up to that person by your choice. You go up to that person, and I want you to introduce yourself, and I want you to tell them, what was the other question we had?
So just tell them your name, your pronouns, where you're from, and then also a change that you want to see in your community. Obviously, not all of us are from Nashville, but we are experiencing some of the same things. So we want you to connect with each other so that you know you're not alone in this. We're together.
So we're going to start a little timer. All right, I'm going to have everybody stand up to their feet really quick if you're able. All right. All right. And if you're not able, just stay, and you can wave your hand at somebody or flag them on down, and they'll come on over. And then I want you to find the color of your row, so you know your row, all right? And once you found that, you go find someone else on the alternate row. And just to help you know, they're probably going to be across from you. But go ahead and find somebody to connect with. We'll give y'all about 4 to 5 minutes to connect. And you can find more than just one person to connect with. So let's connect, guys. All right, all right, all right, you all. We're gonna ask for you to return to your seats. Hopefully everybody has had an opportunity to connect with someone else, feels a little bit more comfortable in this space.
Y'all make some noise for our members for getting us meeting each other. And we do encourage everyone here to become a member. Membership is free. And if you become a member today, we got a free t-shirt for you as well. So before you leave, can we get some flight crew members to wave their hand in the air, turn around and look at all these beautiful members. They will be happy to guide you to sign up for membership. At this time, I want to ask our Youth Assembly member, Correll, to come to the stage. We're going to get ready to start our first panel. We have a great lineup of panelists for you all today. And we have some leadership from one of our very own SMC members. Y'all make some noise for Correll.
Safety, by definition, is the condition of being protected from or unlikely to cause danger, risk, or injury. That's the politically correct definition. Our definitions of what we think depend on a number of things. The youth of Nashville have and are working to change society's definition of this word in our particular place. This place being our schools. People in their teenage years are navigating not only life, but themselves too. So for a teen to spend hours upon hours in these schools, you would imagine them to be safe. Unfortunately, that idea is anything but true. Far beyond the epidemic of school shootings, teens must be extra cautious of what is said out of fear of being institutionalized, or constantly looking over their shoulder and hoping today is not the day a school resource officer sexually assaults and or harasses them. Consider yourself as a teen, sitting in your traditional whitewashed history class, and you're having a bad day. You just need a moment. That moment can turn into a suspension, expulsion, or an arrest. All of this can take place in the span of a day or even hours in our schools. These are a few of the many reasons why we no longer want SROs in our schools. We no longer want to be arrested, prosecuted, and or put into detention centers, as well as we want an environment that is actually relevant and geared towards us and our needs. With the unity power of the youth, we are collectively working to fight for any and all things we want to see changed. We choose to overlook our most powerful tool, but we will no longer take that for granted. Our voices are powerful, and we must use them to achieve the future that we want. All right, now everybody that is going to be participating in our panel, if you don't mind coming to the stage, we'll get ready for that in just a moment. Everybody have a mic? Make sure your mic All right. If you don't mind, please give your name and information about your work and speak to your analysis of the state of community safety and youth justice in Tennessee. Just try to keep it kind of quick, real short, maybe within 90 seconds. Yeah, just so like your name, your work, what you do.
Oh, okay, sorry. Hi, my name is Voki. I attend John Overton High School as a junior.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Christian Buggs. I am a native North Nashvilleian. I grew up right here in the North Nashville area and in Bordeaux. I recently resigned as a school board member representing North Nashville and am the most recent president and CEO of Pencil, a teacher resource center. I also have a son who's been in MNPS in North Nashville for 3 years at Jones Elementary.
Good afternoon. My name is Anita Magaha. I am the Director of Disability Services at the Tennessee State University. Yay! I know we got some TSU in the house. I currently have been at TSU for over 16 years. I started off in the Office of the Legal Counsel, and now I am working in disability services.
Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Johnson. I currently work for the Metro Health Department, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Vincent Dixie. I am the state representative for District 54. I'm in my 3rd term, and District 54 consists of Bordeaux, Whites Creek, a little of Inglewood, Madison, and a little bit of East Nashville. And I have my daughter with me, Hannah Maria, so thank you.
First question for you, Voki. What policies and programs can we employ in schools to ensure student safety without relying on suspensions and student arrests?
I definitely think that when it comes to programs and policies, that we can incorporate remedial programs, and not in the sense to discipline students, but instead help themselves grow, and also the people around them to better support the environment that they're in.
All right. Ms. Buggs, what policies and programs can chip away at the school-to-prison pipeline, such as reducing the numbers of students arrested at schools and the number of school suspensions and expulsions?
So thank you for that question. When I saw it, I started thinking about back in 2018 when we had a previous superintendent there, Dr. Sean Joseph, as a superintendent of MNPS, or Metro Nashville Public Schools. We decided as a city to stop arresting, expelling, or suspending elementary school students, and it really was a collective effort. You had organizations like NOAA, like the Public Health Department, you had the Juvenile Court, you had Gideon's Army. I mean, you just had tons of, the Public Defender's Office, tons of groups came together and said, we've got to find a policy or a bill in another city, another state, and figure out how they've done it. We passed that. It was a great victory, right? We had to fight, we had to claw for everything to make sure that literally 3-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 9-year-olds were not being suspended or expelled. The blowback from the community, I wasn't expecting. The number of parents and educators, and I was most dismayed by the number of educators and parents who were people of color, black people, black teachers, black parents, who were saying, well, if my child gets hit, the child that hit him should be suspended. If my child gets kicked, the child that kicked them should be expended or expelled. It was very frustrating, and what I realized is that it's not so much the policy, but the way that we support and implement the policy and the way that the policy is received by the community. So more than anything, I think we've got to, as a community, better educate ourselves, better watch what's happening at different levels of government to understand who is advocating for or against us. There's so much nuance in policy and bills that we don't get because we're often only watching for sound bites. The loudest person, the person that can go viral, the person that says the most is the thing that we watch. We're missing all the bills and policies and laws that slide in behind that. So I would say, more than anything else, policy is important. Knowing how to watch policy and write policy is important, but knowing how to advocate policy is more important than anything else because we don't do that well the way we used to. There's a lot of reasons why. There's no one's fault. This isn't a gotcha or pointing a finger, but this is something that we've got to remember, that we've got to be always watching what's happening in your school board, what's happening at the council and the mayor level. What is your governor doing? Forget the president. Well, I'm sorry, don't forget them. I mean, I guess that's important too. But the people that are elected, that are closest to us, we have the most influence with them.
All right. Thank you for that, of course. Let's see, to Ms. Magaha. Let's see, will you explain the legal definition of a student with disability? I'm sorry. Will you explain the legal definition of a student with disabilities to get services? What are some legal rights students with disabilities have at the collegiate level? And are those rights also offered to high school and middle school students? If your mic isn't working, just let me know. If it doesn't work.
I guess I will start off with the definition. And so the law that we are governed by is the ADA Act of 1990 and 2008, and as well as the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So we are governed by that, and the law states that disability can be anything, basically, that is substantially limits one or more of a major life activity. So if you have that, then you are considered disabled. In order to obtain an accommodation in high school, it's a little bit different than it is in college. In high school, the schools are responsible for identifying any individual that needs support, whether it is in terms of cognitive support. So if a school has a student with autism or a learning disability, they are responsible for ensuring that student get tested and also provide the appropriate accommodations. That looks a little different for college, because in the high school level or elementary, they meet with the parents, they also meet with the counselors and some of the students' teachers, and they come together and have what they call an individual development plan, educational plan, IEP. So that is how that is developed. And then they move forth with ensuring that that student has all of the resources that they need. In college, the student is responsible for self-identifying. So hopefully when they were at high school, they learn how to advocate for themselves, and they know to come to the Office of Disability Services and to self-identify. Self-identify, just simply coming to the office and letting us know that you need accommodations. And then we take in your paperwork from high school. Some colleges will not accept IEP plans. They will want a psychological assessment. And because we do work in a space where we are working with students that are underprivileged, we know that the assessment will cost anywhere from $2,500 on up for a psychological assessment. And therefore, we really encourage our students, and this is something that's really important, that they get this assessment done while they're in high school, because it's free. And once you get into college, we don't have the resources to pay for the assessment. So that is why it's really important to be evaluated and assessed at that time.
All right, thank you. To Representative Vixen Dixie, will you speak about how we can get more legislation and programs passed that address the root cause of crime and foster safe communities through investments in public goods and education?
First, before we start, I want to thank everyone who had a hand in putting this together. It's not easy to pull off something like this and to do it for 4 years, so thank you so much for doing it. This is a product of what happened when we worked together. Now to your question, I don't know if y'all saw the press conference yesterday that Cameron Sexton had in Memphis about criminal justice reform and things of that nature. It was kind of upsetting because he's out promoting some language that no one has seen yet. And when we talk about criminal justice reform, or when I say criminal justice, I mean the entire system. It's not just bail reform, it's the entire system. So in order for us to really make a change, it starts with a conversation of what we have to see. Things like this, and how we talked about having an agenda when it comes out of this, and agendas become policy, and that's how we change things. I believe in prevention and intervention in order to get to the root cause. I just don't believe in locking people up and throwing away the key. We've been there before. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Putting truth in sentencing, and now they're doing this blended sentencing where they're trying to sentence 16-year-olds as adults, and that's just not fair. It's just not fair, and it just doesn't work. I don't think anybody, when they're committing a crime, are they thinking, oh, well, am I going to do 10 years for this, or am I going to do 10 years at 30%? That doesn't even compute. So what we have to do is we kind of have to work with each other, and we have to learn how to govern each other too, but also on a policy level, we have to learn how to speak with our state representatives, our city council, and as Ms. Buggs was saying, the people who are closest to you are the ones that impact your life. Like your city council person, they literally impact your life as soon as you walk out your door. I mean, they're the sidewalks, your street, the street signs. Those are the people that you have to get to know. I can handle you on the policy side on the state and make different laws, but we have to get to know the people that are in your community who represent you. And it's also important to come down to the Capitol and advocate. We've heard the word advocate, I don't know how many times since we sent up there. You have to learn how to advocate for yourself. You come down there and you have to make meetings with people who don't look like you and don't agree with you. I'm an easy target. It's gonna be an easy meeting. But the hard meetings is to get someone, go talk to someone who doesn't look like you and may not see your point of view, and make them look you in the eye and tell you why they do the silliness and the vindictiveness stuff that they do. But it's up to you. That's why I was so happy to come here when Jamel called me, because one is to come here and see like everybody smiling, happy. The energy in here is just different. And I appreciate it, and because you're really the future. If we could get your demographic, the one that's 18 to 25 to vote, we can change any election in Tennessee. But you have to get involved. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then to Mr. Johnson, in what ways is the school-to-prison pipeline connected to mass incarceration? And how could ending the school-to-prison pipeline make our communities safer and healthier for young people and their families?
Wow, great question. How is it connected? It's connected in several different ways. First of all, I'm gonna take a different track. I'm opposed, I like being the contrarian. I'm opposed that we don't love each other. So it begins there. So when I don't love someone, I impose zero-tolerant policies, and I send them to people that don't have their best interests in mind. And those people end up being connected or attached to that pipe to prison very early in their education process. The health part of that will say that sometimes young people act out when they can't hear or when they can't see. Those are very basic things for us to kind of provide young people with. Can you hear? Can you see? Do you have everything that you need in order to be successful in a classroom? Our policies, on the other hand, interrupt or disrupt that process. I am fascinated with this concept of, very simple concept of us being better people, right? And if I'm a better person, regardless of what my role and responsibilities are, if I know it's going to harm another human being, then maybe I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't support that, whatever I'm asked or required to do. I think poverty is another aspect to this question. And I think poverty is a gateway to poor schools, because our good politicians and local politicians have not always invested properly and effectively in our public schools, in ensuring that the teachers in the schools, the young people in those buildings have what they need in order to be successful. It's a big question, right? And I think we tend to focus on bits and pieces of it, but the entire, I don't know, process or whatever is really about people and how we treat people and how we recognize that, first, no one should live in poverty. Two, second, no child should live in poverty.
I just want to add to that is how when you talked about poverty, poverty is a policy. It's a policy issue. And I want you to just kind of go back and give me a little latitude, but I'm going to bring you up to speed here. I'm going to get you here. I want you to think about how we get here. Now, right now, they want to build more prisons. And they want to do this truth in sentencing, which means you have longer prison sentences so that you have someone to put in those prisons, right? Now, let's go back to when I first got elected. The first thing they did was they passed this castle doctrine where you can carry your guns in your car, in your boats, and things. That was the first step. The second step was open carry. You don't have to have it. So now everybody has a gun. You can do whatever you want to. Then they start to criminalize you for having these guns and these crimes. And now they have prisons. This was something that was systematically done. It didn't just wake up and think about this stuff. It was done. And there's some policies that create, people say, oh, well, that doesn't impact me. I just showed you how it impacts you. And so we have to get involved. And if you don't get involved and you don't learn how to advocate and just start to educate, because like people say, oh, well, we just got to get people to go vote. It's not that easy. You know, first you got to register people to vote, but then you got to educate them. And then once you educate them, you got to do something to motivate them to want to vote, and then you got to just mobilize them. So it's very important when you say about the poverty is definitely a policy. We have too much in this country that we worry about right now. There's only 4 things that we should be worrying about. Making sure everyone has enough money to pay their bills, enough food on their table, a roof over their head, and if they get sick, go see a doctor. That's it. Then after you solve those, then we can argue about everything else. But until we solve those 4 things, that should be our focus.
All right. Thank you for that. And then real quick, just a quick little spiel. Please share a call to action or steps community members can take to build safe communities with a thriving education system. Wherever you want to start at.
One thing that I would like to talk to you about, a lot of you are probably familiar with the Attorney General. Now, if you notice, our Attorney General is always sticking his nose somewhere else. He's joining a letter or writing a letter with someone else. Now he's writing a letter with 10 other AGs about stopping basically the BlackRock, which is a female investment venture capitalist firm that invests in women. They're trying to sue and say that that's not right or whatever, it's not equitable, which is ridiculous. When you ask for a call to action, this was probably right up my thing. Next Wednesday, the Black Caucus is having technically a hearing with the AG on Wednesday, and it'll be at 4:30 at the Capitol. I would love to see as many of us as we can in there, because I'm telling you, when you show up and they see people that don't look like them, they see us, their tone changes and their story changes. And our goal is just to get them on record for saying some stuff, and then we can come back and hold it against them, and then we can use some policy against them. But the key is, if we show up in some of those committee meetings and things of that nature, that's how bills get passed. Most people come I'm going to just give it to you only way I know. The crazy people are the ones that show up every day. And I'm going to tell you the truth. Crazy people show up every day because the same people will say, man, that's too crazy, it'll never pass. And I'm going to go on to work today, or I'm going to stay home and watch TV, I'm going to do something else. Crazy people are there every day advocating for some craziness or silliness. And it passes because they're like, well, this is what the community wants. No, it's what like those 4 people want, but they're the loudest. So you have to get up off your butt and go advocate for stuff. Now, we're in a church, so I'm going to try not to curse, but I will. Some is probably going to slip out today, but all right.
So I just want to correct, or for the record state, he meant crazy as a social colloquialism, not as a clinical diagnosis, right? Right. I think that's important to know. Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah. I think the serious call to action here is really about mental health issues. I fear every day that we have a suicide epidemic within our young people in our community. And again, people are not receiving the care, the time, attention, and care that they need. That's really the call to action. And when you really start talking about policies and things of that nature, we need more mental health professionals within our school system. And, you know, poverty kills. And I think when you're focused on poverty-related issues, you don't have time or make time to advocate for yourself or other people or see the bigger picture and things of that nature. The other thing I think I would call for, I think every child in a school should have some sort of club and extracurricular activity. Across the board, no matter what grade they're in and who they are and things of that nature. I think if we're serious about caring about young people, we have to invest in young people. And that's the greatest return on our investment is a healthy, happy young person.
Sure, so I'll jump in. I love what our first two panelists mentioned, and I'll add, I've lived in Nashville, or in North Nashville, my entire life. I'm 38 years old. I was a teacher in Nashville. I went to schools in North Nashville. I've learned a lot being in this city, being in this part of the city. I also have a 5-year-old son who's in kindergarten at Jones Elementary. 80% of black boys in Nashville come into first grade a whole grade level behind. That doesn't mean that black boys and black men aren't brilliant. That doesn't mean that they don't have capacity to learn. It means that they're underinvested in at every stage of life. From the time they're in the womb with their black mothers, they are underinvested in. From the time they are born and they're sent to daycares, early learning centers, they're underinvested in if they're not sitting at home with someone's aunt, grandmother, sister, sibling. We aren't trying to do this. We are literally just trying to function. We can't think about thriving because we're so busy surviving, right? So I would first say that when I think about stalling or stopping the school to prison pipeline, I've got to think about how black lives don't matter to everyone and how the youngest of black lives don't matter even to black people. I know that's hard to hear, but it is a truth. My son goes to a predominantly black school in a gentrified neighborhood. The homes across the way from him are $700,000 schools, $700,000 homes. There's not a single PTO in North Nashville, not a single one. When you look at the Pearl Cone cluster, better yet, if you look at the 50 top performing schools in Nashville, all of them have a PTO, and all of them have raised at least $35,000. They have figured out how to stop the school to prison pipeline in their communities, but black people, we don't. Because as soon as we get I'm gonna go ahead and trigger some of y'all. As soon as we get a couple pennies to rub together, we are fleeing our black schools. It's okay for us to live in the black neighborhood, maybe, for some of us. Some of us don't even wanna live next to each other. So we wanna scream that Black Lives Matter, but we don't wanna live next to black people. We wanna suggest that Black Lives Matter or that we should invest in black students, but we don't send our kids to our neighborhood schools. Cumberland is a school that I attended in elementary school. Think about how many people you know with money that live in the Cumberland neighborhood and they'll send their kids to Cumberland. Whites Creek was once the top performing school in Nashville, especially in black Nashville. Think about how many black people you know in North Nashville that send their kids to Whites Creek. That's not speaking ill of black Nashville. That's not speaking ill of Whites Creek. It is suggesting that this is a bigger pandemic. We don't think about white supremacy and how we internalize it as ourselves, as black adults. So I can't only focus on policy because I was a policy maker and a policy passer and I didn't see shifts. I saw them incrementally, sure, but what I was hoping to see was sweeping shifts Better yet, let me back up. I'm gonna go ahead and trigger you again. We have a phenomenal superintendent in Dr. Adrian Battle right now. We had a phenomenal superintendent in Dr. Sean Joseph also. But his demise was he was trying to shift dollars to our poorest, blackest, most disenfranchised schools, and the community panicked. Instead of people saying, oh goodness, he's trying to send twice as many dollars to the Whites Creeks, the Pearl Cones, the Cumberlands, the Joneses of the world than what were being invested. And that's when it started to be, the conversation began to shift to, he's mismanaging dollars. Why does equity have to come at the expense of my child? So there's so much that I could say about all the different ways we need to differently invest in children and think about how do we shift policies and how do we shift who the lawmakers are. But until we internalize the idea that we have internalized white supremacy so much that we think sending our black children to black neighborhood schools is meaning that I am sacrificing my child, we'll never get any further. We never will. When I tell people that my son goes to Jones, they try to sway me to homeschool, they try to sway me to private school, and please know, every parent deserves to do what is best for their child. What I would hope is that we eventually have the conversation around why do we think this predominantly black school is not best for our child? When do we as adults begin to say, you know what, if I can invest in my child in sports, in arts, maybe I could use some of that funding and time to invest so that his peers, her colleagues, her teachers get more, because we will never see the sweeping shifts in policy and funding until we have real skin in the game, and we can go to I'll say his name, a Representative Sapicki from Maury County who wants to suggest that all predominantly black schools are bad, until we can go collectively to him and say, well, actually, my school isn't bad, it's just underfunded. Then we won't see the shift we want to see. Until we can go to a Cameron Sexton and say, you are trying to make sure that we reject dollars, that we say, all right, any student that has an IEP, we don't have to serve you because we don't have to accept the federal dollars. Until we can go to a Cameron Sexton and say, all of our children deserve better, all of our children are ours and deserve to be invested in, and until we can stop cherry picking ourselves out, we will never see what we want to see. And I'm gonna stop right here because I could do a whole TED Talk.
Did you have an answer?
Talk about the IEP. I definitely want to speak to that, because when you think about some of the predominantly white institutions, they do not have to accept the IEP. And so that puts our students, our black and brown kids, at a disadvantage. They cannot get the assessment in order to receive the resources and the tools they need to be successful in that environment. So they know that. So then you go ahead and go to school, you go to that PWI, you don't have the resources that you need, you fail because you know you need time and a half on your exam to be successful, and they just let you go. So eventually you'll fail out and you'll go to a different school. So for at Tennessee State University, we accept IEPs. We know that we're not going to put you at a disadvantage. We know that that's a barrier to your success, and so we accept it. And we also want to say that it's really important for students to know what they are diagnosed with and how does that impact you in the academic setting. A lot of times we're not telling our children what's going on. They're taking control of the IEPs in some of the other schools, and they actually know their diagnosis, can articulate well what they need, and that's really important when you're talking about a call to action.
I know you have to move on to another question, but we're gonna hijack it anyway. So I just want to go to reiterate on what Ms. Buggs was saying about prison and pipeline, and about how policy, I just had to interject to keep having, let you know how policy truly impacts our lives. We care more about making our schools, they'll say they're under the guise of making them safe, but we're making our schools more like prisons. And we care about more of making our schools like prisons than we care about gun reform. I just want you to think about that. We're going to spend like $700 million on SROs, things of that nature that we don't want anyway, because SROs are trained police officers. They're not trained in child education. So we don't want to, it's becoming more of a prison. that's a policy. And then when you start, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Let me interject. Is it a policy or is it people's behavior making choices? The policy is not, to organize or arrange schools specifically in the manner in which it is. It's people's interpretation of that. So that personal behavior and our lack of agency or creativity or decision-making or solutions, it's the behavior is what I'm specifically getting at. The laws are gonna be the laws. I mean, we talk about policy. Slavery is the longest policy of this country, and it was in effect for 400 and some years. So policies themselves are not going to solve or fully address the issues, but our individual behavior, how we view and understand what our role or what the specific challenge is calling us to do is what I'm seeing. Yeah.
And I just think that policy it creates a framework for other things to happen. And that's what we have to try to dismantle this system that wasn't made for us or for us to succeed in. And let's go back like we were talking about earlier. If you keep us in struggle mode, if you keep us hungry and you keep us just worried about just trying to get through the day, you're not worried about tomorrow. I'll worry about tomorrow. But until we get out of struggle mode, then you can kind of see the bigger picture, and then you can take time to advocate for yourself and your loved ones and your children.
And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge this about when we talk about resourcing and funding, when we talk about how much it costs to have a prisoner in a prison, think about how much it costs to educate a child. So one of the predetermined questions was, what would it take to fully fund Metro Nashville Public Schools? So one thing that I didn't know even as a teacher and wouldn't have known as a parent unless I was on the school board is that we spend $14,000 per child in MNPS, $14,000, just keep that in mind. That constitutes $1 billion budget once you calculate that across 81,000 students, right? Okay. Well, I don't know what $14,000 looks like, do you? I didn't. So I started looking at private schools. USN, I love USN, and Dr. Armani Reed, who's there, he's a great guy. He's the first person of color to lead that school, but he told me that they charge $38,000 per child. 38, okay? That's not including what they fundraise. So even if you only estimated that was $40,000 per child, that's still almost 3 times more than we spend. I just think that's cool, not cool. I think it's interesting to know, and it's a good advocacy place for us to start, because you can look at the budget all day and say, oh, those schools, they're mismanaging dollars. What dollars do we have to mismanage? We ain't gotten it. We have very little.
All right, everybody, please give our panelists a big round of applause. Thank you all.
I would just love to shout out that I do see a school board candidate in the room. She's also a teacher and counselor, Ms. LaTanya Winfrey, and her son, who she is actually advocating for because she has realized his cognitive needs. So appreciate you being here.
Beautiful. We just have a few more minutes for this panel. We wanted to make sure we took questions. One, I want to shout out our youth students who hopefully gave us a call to action. Shout out to them, our Youth Assembly interns. Please give it up for them. They have been working with us for over a year to determine their policy priorities. And I just want to give it up for them for really doing the work of meeting with their peers, meeting with their classmates to really talk about what they want to see in schools and what safety is to them. So really redefining public safety. And I know we got a few, I want to wrap us up really quickly. And I want to highlight one question that we got during our registration. And one main question was, and y'all kind of spoke to it, we'll actually speak to it in like 30 seconds or 60 seconds, but how can we begin to start to address the racial disparities that we see inside the school system? And I'm not just talking, so we want to talk about racial disparities when we think about expulsion and young people who are suspended, but also educational disparities too, right? And then the other thing we want to name is that we know that so many of the young, a disproportionate amount of the young people who are suspended and expelled are also students with disabilities, right? And students, right, as we mentioned, who are in poverty or come from families that are cash poor. So if y'all could speak to that in 30 seconds, that would be really beautiful.
I'll start. I think I got part of it.
I preached a little bit there, didn't I? You want me to re-ask the
No,
question?
no. I think we do an extremely poor job of talking about race. And it's not really about race. It's really about racial hierarchy. It's about when a black person and a white person walks into a room, what does the black person think of him or herself, and what does the white person think of him or herself? It's really racial hierarchy. It doesn't matter if someone's a racist, but it does matter. But more importantly, it matters what you do with your gifts and talents. And I think that's really the through line of my points here. It's we have more control over what we influence than we allow ourselves to believe.
When I was my first year, when I was a freshman, and I had this bill. It was called the Grow Your Own Teacher Act. And what it would do is it would take teachers that are in the classroom or the aides and help them become full-time teachers and paras and things of that nature. And they could use some of their experience, because it's hard to say, all right, I'm going to go student teach for a semester when you have life requirements and expectations. So when I ran the bill, it's like, oh no, it won't work. It's just too much. It's going to cost too much. It's not going to happen. So they killed my bill, and now the governor made it a policy, the Grow Your Own Teacher Act. They didn't even change the name. It's called the Grow Your Own Teacher Act. And they go all over the country, and it gets all kind of awards for that. The reason how I did that, because I went to Hunters Lane, which is probably the best school anyway, but I went to Whites Creek, which is a lot of the kids are in my district, and a lot of my friends went there growing up. And I saw a lot of my friends back there teaching in their same school, and that light came on with me. It's like it understands their cultural competency. So you have people in here that understand what they may be going through. They may know that Junior is having a bad day because his mom works 2 jobs and she was tired. So they don't. The first reaction is not to send him to the office. It's maybe be to just call him to the side and just give him a few minutes, because they know that his kids, his family, his uncles, they were a little crazy in school, so he probably got a little touch of it too. So I'm gonna give him a little leeway. But it's the cultural competency that we have to get back in it to help with some of those disparities, and it comes with hiring.
And I would say just be there, be in schools. Whether your child attends a school or not, whether you're even at childbearing age, just having adults in the school buildings, you'd be surprised at how that changes the culture. Good schools aren't made, I just gave you the statistics, good schools aren't made by children. They're made by the adults. So that's the parents and the educators. I have literally seen parents be able to organize and get a teacher fired because they were not living up to the high expectations that those parents had. Whether you agree with that or not, those schools tend to be the highest performing. We don't do that as a community the way we once did. So I would say just be there, whether it's volunteering your time, your talent, or your treasure. I will say I'm currently the president and CEO of Pencil. Pencil stands for Public Education Needs Community Investment and Leadership. We would love to have you invest in MNPS schools by walking alongside us. We're not asking you to give us your last dime. We're just asking you to give us a bit of time so you can mentor students. We're asking you to be there so that you can see children are not swinging from the rafters in our school buildings. They could use more help and more support, but they just need love. They need to be humanized. And again, I could talk forever about this, so I'm gonna shut up.
Agree, Ms. Buggs. I do agree with everyone here, and that the resources are needed. And also, I think that in the way in which we teach instruction, just lecturing, we need to move towards, some schools are doing this well and some are not, is universal design and learning. Utilizing multiple means of engagement. How do you engage with your student in school? You know, multiple means of expression and action. How do they express what they have learned? Multiple means of representation. How do you represent the information to them? You can do it in multiple ways. So utilizing all of those things, I think is important when we're talking about instruction, and also ensuring that our students have the resources that they need. We teach to the whole person, holistically. Like he was saying, if the child is hungry, if the child has some mental illness situation, some kind of cognitive situation going on, we need to deal with all of that so that they can be successful in the academic setting. Thank you.
All right.
We just want to say thank you again to all our panelists. You all can return to your seats.
All right, and don't forget, Wednesday in the Cordell Hall building, 4:30. If you can come, be there. At Cordell Hall, 4:30, it's a meeting with the AG. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please give it up again for our panelists. And I want to name, folks had really great questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but I do want to acknowledge, how beautiful this panel was and how organic it felt like to be in that conversation. And that, while there are questions we couldn't get to, I want to let folks know, and y'all may be the first to know, but we'll have a People Moving Assembly on February 24th that folks are invited to, where we'll dig into some of these questions around, right, reparations, around what we can do to, do as Mrs. Bugg's name, really support our schools and be inside of our schools. So, come to our People Moving Assembly on February 24th so we can begin to ask those questions together, both with our panelists, but also these are questions that we can collectively answer, because we believe that our people also, have the expertise and understand what we need to make our communities thrive. And I'll invite my friend Mike back up to bring on our next act.
So, we always bring the arts if you've been to any Southern Movement Committee or Black Nashville Assembly event. So we have a phenomenal performer coming up. I need y'all to get as loud as you can for as long as you can for Sheldon. Make some noise, y'all.
Testing, testing. How's everybody doing? What's going on, Black Assembly? Okay, my name is Sheldon. I'm gonna make it real informal today. If y'all can give it up for my best friend over here, my name is Tyna. Say hey, Tyna. Yeah, we're just gonna do a couple of things. I'm gonna get out you guys' way. It's an honor to be here today, and we're gonna keep it going. Here we go. Listen. And I hope that you're the one. If not, then you are the prototype. We'll tiptoe to the sun and do things I know you like. I think I'm in love again. Say today must be my lucky day, baby. You are the prototype. Let's do something out of the ordinary. Can't you imagine it, baby? You are the prototype, and I think I'm in love. And say, ooh, ooh, I think I'm in love again. Ooh, you are the prototype, baby. You are the prototype. Cool, thank you. All right, I got one more for y'all. I'm gonna get out you guys' way. It's a pretty easy song, so if you guys know it, you can help me sing along. All right. Yeah. Da 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 da. Yeah. Da 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 da. Yeah. Oh yeah. Hey, I know your eyes in the morning sun, and I feel you touch me in the pouring rain. In the moment that you wander far from me, I wanna feel you in my arms again. And you've come to me on a summer breeze. Keep me warm in your love, then you softly leave. And it's me that you need to show. And how deep is your love? Is your love? How deep is your love? And I really need to learn. And 'cause we're living in a world of fools, breaking us down, and they all should let us be. We belong to you and me. I believe in you, and you know the door to my very soul. You're the light in my deepest, darkest hour. Yes, you are. You're my savior. We're not far. And you may not think that I care for you, but when you know deep down inside, I really do. Oh, and it's me that you need to show. How deep is your love? Is your love? How deep is your love? And I really need to learn. 'Cause we're living in a world of fools, breaking us down, and they all should let us be. Yeah, we belong to you. And how deep is your love? How deep is your love? And I really need to learn. 'Cause we're living in a world of fools, breaking us down, and they all should let us be. We belong to you. How deep is your love? How deep is your love? I really need to learn, 'cause we're living in a world of fools, breaking us down, and they all should let us be. We belong to you and me. Thank you, guys. Hope the assembly was great. My name is Sheldon. Y'all be safe.
Wait. We're not finna just act like that didn't just happen. Y'all make some noise for Sheldon. Sheldon, where can we find you, follow you? Where can we find your music?
Everywhere, SHELLDHN. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, SHELLDHN. Thank y'all. It's an honor.
Thank you
God
so
bless
much. Y'all
y'all.
make some more noise for Sheldon. At this time, we're going to keep pushing ahead. We've got another panel for y'all. I'm going to hand it over to our executive director, Erica Perry.
Dope. How many people feel a little bit more in love now? Do you love black people? Right? You feel more like you're committed to really showing what that love looks like? Yes. Again, thank you so much for Sheldon, for really reminding us what it looks like to invite arts and culture into our work. Really quickly, though, as I'm inviting our panelists for our next panel up, please come. I want to just shout out to the folks who are elected officials in the room. I heard we had some elected officials in the room. If you could just stand up for us. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I want to invite the folks who are running for office to stand up too, please. Oh, yeah, y'all showed up today. Shout out to y'all. Yes, beautiful. Thank you so much for being with us. Please, I invite you to talk to them as we have a moment to really interact. But I invite our friend Trey, who's going to welcome our next panel.
Good afternoon, everybody. In this next panel, we're going to be discussing the state of community building with a focus on Black businesses and public dollars. We want to talk about the needs of our communities and the deficits that exist. We want to be clear in knowing what is happening now, how those things are impacting the lives of working class Black Tennesseans, and the mechanisms to implement changes that invest in public goods while divesting from harm. As an organization, one of the mechanisms of change that we champion is a people's budget, a budget formed through a participatory democratic process where the people that make up this community set the priorities and resources are allocated accordingly. And through our many discussions with over 10,000 Tennesseans, we know that what community members say they need and care about and what our elected officials implement are often contradictory. Metro Nashville Public Schools remains underfunded, and Memphis Public Schools had a $196 million shortfall in their budget, while $450 million is being allocated to fund building a multi-agency law enforcement training academy. Development continues to be prioritized while the cost of living continues to increase and affordable housing issues mount. Corporations continue to take from our communities and sustain record profits, while local Black businesses who actually invest in the communities they serve have far less success and are often priced out of properties by overdevelopment and gentrification. We would like to continue this discussion of building communities vast in resources and understanding the part we all are invited to play in realizing this goal. Are we missing one person? Okay. All right. Could Nick and Chinyere raise your hand? If you have questions, we would ask that you just raise your hand with the index card written on them so that we can get them up here as soon as possible. So if you have a question, if you don't have an index card, you can also raise your hand and somebody will make sure you get one. All right, so the first question is, each panelist is going to get 90 seconds to introduce yourself and share your perspective on the intersection of public dollars, Black businesses, and community development. Whoever wants to start.
How y'all doing? Good, good. Amen. But it's good to be in the house of the Lord today. My name is Bartholomew Jones. I am an educator, a rapper, and a Black coffee anthropologist. So weird mix of things, but that's what I do. I also used to be a junior deacon, you know what I'm saying? So it's good to be back in the building. For me, I believe that our organization, Coffee Black, is uniquely positioned to kind of speak on this topic because my wife and I were both educators for 10 years in Memphis, Tennessee, which is where I'm from. And I also spend a lot of time in the coffee industry. Coffee is a $500 billion industry. It's the most drank liquid on the planet after water. Some people gonna tell you it's tea, but we don't talk to those people. It was discovered by Black people, and Black people make less than 1% of that globally, according to the president of Uganda. And so in my neighborhood in Memphis, Tennessee, we're facing gentrification. And generally, coffee shops are one of the 4 horsemen of the gentrification apocalypse, and they're very seldomly owned by people who are where coffee comes from, which is Black folks. And so we are trying to garner some of that market share to address the needs in our community, the needs we try to address as public educators. And we found that oftentimes there's very little public support when it comes to access to public dollars. So we've had to bootstrap most of our business. At this point, we've made over $1 million in revenue, and all that has been generated from us hustling and working within our community. And so I feel like the opportunity to impact and compete globally with these businesses that do not want to invest in our community is there if we can access some of these public dollars that oftentimes don't go to businesses like mine and my wife's. So.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Vivian Wilhoit. I'm your assessor of property of Nashville and Davidson County. I want to first say thank you for those who voted for me back in 2016 and blessed me with the opportunity to serve you, because it is my pleasure to serve. One of the very first things when I went into office is to make sure that people were empowered with the knowledge that they did not know. Exemption of property is very important when you have religious institutions and not-for-profit who are serving the people and doing the job of the government to save the people. And many times, some of those entities did not know that they could be exempted. And so I went to work and helped organizations to be exempted, like Trina Frierson, who serve women who come out of prison and giving them an opportunity with their hands up and to be able to clothe them and help them and get on their way. That is something that Trina Frierson did not know, that she could be exempted and save that money that she was given to the government. I got on Trina and got her exempted, and now she's able to use that money to continue to help with those who are in need. So when we talk about investing in public dollars in Black businesses, it can serve as a catalyst for community development, fostering economic development and empowerment, and reducing various disparities. The intersection that you asked me the question of, it creates the opportunities for job creation, wealth accumulation, and more inclusive economic development. That could ultimately, it can contribute to an overall well-being of our community. That is what we want. Wealth generated as a result of Black businesses circulating in the community contributes to increased property values. Why? Because there is growth. Because there's growth. Not only does the increased property occurs as a result of wealth generated through the circulation of Black businesses, but it also from the real estate perspective. You create generational wealth by investing in yourself. I repeat, you create generational wealth by investing in yourself, in your community, which is why since I've been elected, I tell you, do not sell your property. Sell access to your property. 99-year leases. You own the land because you know what? God ain't making no more land. So you sell access to your property. Do not sell your property. I have said this over and over in every type of platform that I can be in when I'm talking to my people or when I'm talking to other people, because it does create generational wealth. And so today, I just want to put that on your mind, and this is the perspective on the intersection of public dollars in Black businesses and in our community. I am Vivian Wilhoit. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jamel Campbell-Gooch. I'm the organizer director at the Southern Movement Committee. And every year, we do our People's Budget campaign where we go into the community and talk to people about what's happening with their tax dollars and what's happening with our public dollars. Just to give you a couple of facts, last year, our local budget grew by 35%. It eclipsed $3 billion for the first time, and the downtown area, through largely what we see all the time, people visiting our city, made over $9 billion. There was so much money that the year before last, we had a $64 million surplus. So when we talk about that, let me break that down one more step. That means that there's enough money in our local budget and enough money being generated in our city where we should have continuous sidewalks, where our schools should be well-resourced, where there should be almost no community lack, and we have accessible fresh food, grocery stores, and some of the solutions to our generational problems that are in this room should be fixed. But oftentimes, those dollars go into continuously jailing in our community, continuously using police and corporate punishment to actually make up for our lack of accessibility to public goods. That is what's happening, right? Even historically, throughout time here, movement has consistently asked for public goods, but in return, we have consistently gotten police as a solution to our problems. And so what we try to do with our People's Budget campaign is we try to break down the budget in a way where everyday working class folks not only have the ability to understand what's happening with public dollars, not only have the ability to frame up the misuse of our public dollars and the lack of creativity coming from our current elected officials, but also have the ability to weigh in and build on solutions. when it comes to our public dollars. I know we talked about this before, just to give a little bit more facts. Right now, there's a multi-agency law enforcement training facility that's being built on Cockrell Bend. That is being built with $415 million of our dollars, while other places like Memphis is having to lay off teachers because they have a $126 million shortfall. So what I'm trying to present to you is that we have the solutions, and it's time to organize for a people's budget so that we can put pressure on those who have political power in our community to actually allocate dollars into the things that we know will make our community safe. Thank you.
Thank y'all. All right, this question is for all of the panelists, and we can start down there, Jamel, since you started this way. How can an increased understanding of how tax dollars are spent on public goods contribute to building better resource communities, particularly for Black and working class communities?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that question. Yes, I think the more and more we talk about the budget, and the more and more we bring up an understanding and get a collective understanding of what's happening with our local dollars, the more and more we can identify holes and identify what's happening, so therefore we can work on them. When we first started doing our People's Budget campaign work in 2019, when we first started doing our People's Budget campaign work in 2019, folks who were politically activated at that time knows that there's a stark difference between how we do our city budget now versus how we did our city budget then. Back then, there was very few opportunities for everyday working class folks like us to actually even comment on the budget. I think when we started, we can only speak on the budget one time, right? And we are credited for continuously speaking on that budget one time so long that we created the longest city council meeting in the history of Nashville, right? Which is an example, and those folks were there talking about, we want to increase spending on things that increase our accessibility to public goods. We want grocery stores and food deserts. We want better pay for teachers. We want our schools to be better resourced because we know that would create safe communities. And now, the public budget, as far as Nashville, we are consistently talking about that over and over again. So when it comes to actually bringing up a collective consciousness around where our dollars are going, it helps us to build out solutions that not only affect our lives, but can expand to affect more and more of Black Tennesseans' lives.
I love hearing that because when I served on the Metro Council for 2 terms, having your voice means that, of course, you have input in the process. And I'm very glad to know that the Metro Council has now, because of you and others, they have the input of public hearing all the time. And that's good because the people want to be heard, not always on the first of Tuesday and the third Tuesday, but they want to be heard every Tuesday. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I've already said Tuesday, and of course on Saturday and Sunday. But the question is about how the increase and understanding of how tax dollars are spent on public goods contribute to building better resource communities. Education is important. You have to know how the game is played before you can play the game. The only people that changes in the game is the people. The only thing that changes in the game is the people. So once you get involved, just like Jamal just mentioned, and understand how the game is played, you work within the rules. Sometimes you may disrupt the rules, but you got to go to the people who are going to make the change. So I'm of the belief in order to make a better resource community is that we have to educate ourselves about the process. I have to be honest with you. There's not a day I don't pass where somebody does not understand what is it that the assessor of property do. What is our responsibility? And to know that the assessor of property provides you with the value of more than 274,000 parcels in this city, residential, commercial, and also just leaving an event to educate my brothers and sisters about the fact that if you have a business, you pay a share of that on your personalty as far as taxes. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to be paying a whole lot, but the whole point of the matter, know the process. Because when you don't pay it, then you, of course, the process will give you a consequence. So in order for us to increase this type of resource, better community, we educate ourselves. Then we move, then we march, then we move, then we re-educate ourselves. And then whomever's in control of the process, if there's something that has to be done, because in my staff, I don't go for somebody to tell me that's the way we've always done it. Because you know what they say about insanity, you get the very same thing. So we've changed a lot of things in the Office of the Assessment of Property, and one of the primary things that we do is to educate you about the process so that you can be empowered to take advantage of the benefits of what we offer in the office. So my answer to that is to educate yourself on the process, then you move and mobilize. Thank you.
I want to speak from the perspective of a business owner, a new business owner. Prior to this, I was just doing music and teaching and nerding out on coffee. So I didn't come from a background of going to school for business, but I got put in the real life, hard knock school of business by starting one. And what I will say, an understanding of tax dollars and how they're spent, what that's done for me is that it gave me access to where the opportunity is going to be. And when we think about, and when I say we, I mean descendants of African people, when we think about our communities, we often don't see them as places where money is going to be. We see them as places where money has already left. Amen. And so because of that, when you think about starting a business, you're looking to where you already see signs of wealth, right? I'm thinking about starting a business downtown. I'm thinking about starting a business in what we call in Memphis Midtown, which is like where all the hipsters is at. You feel me? Or maybe I'm thinking about going to the suburbs to start a business. But when you're curious, everybody say curious. When you're curious, it causes you to be able to understand things on a deeper level, to see things that have not happened yet. And that's important when you're doing this kind of work because money is tricky. It's like water, right? It's always moving, at least in a river anyway. If it's stagnant, it's dead. Don't drink that. But the interesting thing about what we were able to discover by being curious is that we found out that the neighborhood where my childhood church was moving to was where the city was going to put $7 million in 7 years. Right? Now, had I just followed my church and not asked any questions before I went there, I wouldn't have known that information. And then when it was time for me to start my business, I probably would have went downtown. I probably would have went to the suburbs. But when I looked at the neighborhood we were in, I'm like, oh, they putting $7 million here. Who is going to benefit from that? Now, if I was foolish, I probably would have said, oh, let's stop the investment. But I studied sociology in college, and the interesting thing about gentrification is that it's actually a neutral term. We think about gentrification as something bad. What's bad is the displacement that happens because of gentrification. But gentrification just means the reintroduction of the gentry, and gentry is an old English term for a higher class. So you can't stop a river from moving, right? But you can benefit from its current. So if I know that they're putting $7 million in my neighborhood, now the question is, who's going to benefit from the introduction of that $7 million, right? Same way when I look at a thing that I love like coffee and I see it's $500 billion a year, the question is, who's going to benefit? If we look at who is currently benefiting from this introduction of the money of where the river is going, it's not us. Even though oftentimes we are the people who made these things valuable. We are the people who made these places worthy of investment. We added the sauce. We added the seasoning. We made it interesting to be in this neighborhood. So for me, the thing that understanding gave me, it gave me curiosity enough to see, well, what could happen if we start the coffee shop before the money comes? What could happen if we hire my students I taught, who I used to have to beg and plead with not to go sell certain products that were imported in this country.
Come on.
Instead of me begging and pleading and saying, don't do it because it's right, I can say, let me give you a job.
Come on.
Yeah. Don't sell that, sell this, right? Instead of starting a coffee shop that was going to tell my neighbor, you got to pay $7 for this cup of coffee, I can say, okay, you come in, the first sip is free. Some of my neighbors are still on their first sip. It's really their 23rd sip. But then I could go to my community and say, okay, well, who wants to sign up for a coffee subscription, right? Nationally, internationally. And if I can just say, we just got nominated for most notable roaster of the year.
Come on.
We're one of only 2 American companies that were nominated this year, and we're the first company ever nominated from the state of Tennessee. So what does that do? enough people online see me being curious about my own community, they sign up for an online coffee subscription. So if you need coffee, I got you, let me know. They sign up for a subscription, which allows me to pay for my neighbor's cup. So, oh yeah, we got something right there in the back. Holler at my twin with no dreads, he got you. But it gives me an opportunity then to say, well, if we're gonna leverage the money that's already moving, that's gonna give a little space, a little momentum for my neighbor to get what he needs for free, right? For me to be generous, right? Because we're leveraging our influence globally and internationally, and we're being curious about the ways things can be, not necessarily just being upset about the way they already are. And that requires you to look forward, you feel me? So I think knowing where the money's going to be, especially when it comes to knowing that where it's going to be in our community, gives us the time to plan ahead of time, to put our business where the money's going to be ahead of time, and then be strategic about who we hire and how we. And I don't want to talk about, I do at some point want to talk about the difference between a black business and a black owned and operated business, because there is a difference, but we can talk about that later. But
talk about it now,
brother. If I could, in reference to what my brother just stated, when he's speaking of knowing about where things are going to go, how many of you remember? Because I was on the Metro Council. Remember this book called The Plan of Nashville? Mm-hmm. You remember that?
No, but there's something in Memphis called the Green Print.
The Green Print. Yep.
And it's a 25-year gentrification plan.
So the Plan of Nashville, it had it all in there. Where Nashville is going to go, where growth is going to be, where growth is going to happen, where change is going to be made, where you're going to have some real nice stop signs and real nice, entry names of the neighborhood. It's all in there. It talks about the zoning, the whole 9 yards. But you know what? We don't read it. That's how you be ahead of the game, to know where they're going, what this brother's just saying.
If I can mention two things real fast. So first, at the Black Nashville Assembly, we have a city council watch where we take the time to break bread with folks, but also talk about what's happening in city council, right? Because a lot of things what we're even talking about in Nashville, that happens in zoning changes, right? The reason why some of us live in a food desert is because it hasn't been zoned to be able to produce fresh food there. So we have a city council watch. Also, while we talk about where things are going, right? One thing that we made sure that we talked about even in this district is that they're talking about building a baseball stadium right on the agricultural land at Tennessee State University. Now that has a lot of consequences, not only to the people that live in this district, right? But it also has a lot of consequences to the people going to Tennessee State University because it is a land grant institution. Mm-hmm. And so right now, Major League Baseball is posturing themselves to actually come into our community and build another major league sports, another professional sports venue. So those type of things go into effect, especially when it comes to the planning of what a city is going to look like.
All right, y'all teaching us up here. Bart, this question is for you. In what ways are Coffee Black and anti-gentrification coffee club organizations focused on community improvements, and what would be your advice to other black businesses?
So now I can talk about the black owned and operated part. First off, I forgot to shout my wife out. Shout out to Renata Henderson, you know what I'm saying? First black female roaster in Memphis history, and she also real fine, you know what I'm saying? So come on, look, we got you in the back table. We got plenty of work back there, legal work, you know what I'm saying? So what I would want to say about our business, Coffee Black, and then the cafe concept we created called the Anti-Gentrification Coffee Club, or AGCC for short, I think that again, it's going back to that curiosity piece, right? Because if we just take things as they're handed to us, oftentimes those things are harmful for us. And that's just the way that this country is, and oftentimes it's the way this world is, right? Like the scriptures say, be in the world, but not of the world, right? And so when we think about the things that the world gives us, we got to be curious enough to start asking some questions before we just start using them. I was reading Proverbs with my sons Shout out to Maurice and Freeman in Thurgood. I was reading Proverbs with my sons on the way to school. We do that every morning, I remember. And it was talking about how a little bit of honey is good for you, but a lot of it's going to make you sick. Come on. And I think that process is true when we think about the way capitalism works. A little bit of it sometimes is okay, but when you just start taking the whole bottle down, it turns into a thing that's going to make you sick to your stomach. The business model that most coffee businesses operate under is one of a commuter business model, right? So especially cafes. That means I make my money by somebody who doesn't live close to where this cafe is, driving here, and then being able to spend money with me, which in and of itself is not wrong until you realize the customer is always right. And if the customer don't like the fact that my neighbor, let's say Mr. Johnson, been out, at the store all night, and he walking down the street stumbling, and he about to come in here and get some coffee, and we gonna laugh, but they're uncomfortable with this inebriated man in the building, and I gotta pay my bills based off of their comfort, then I find myself at a crossroads where I can't love my neighbor like I wanna love myself. At Coffee Black, we say love black people like you love black coffee, right? Now I got to put some sugar and cream in my interaction with Mr. Johnson that is harmful to him. So we had to ask some questions. What would it look like for us to actually center our community as the primary people who are driving our ability to make revenue, which took a lot of creativity, because my community doesn't have access to a lot of wealth. Come on. And generally, especially when you're trying to do right by our cousins across the continent, right? We built an all-black supply chain for our coffee. So it's the first one ever from Ethiopia to Memphis. So we go to Ethiopia every year. I appreciate you. And we work with black exporters, importers, roasters. We train youth as baristas. We do all this work to make sure that we're doing right by our cousins, right? Because I don't believe in somebody growing something out the ground and not receiving what they deserve from the fruit of their labor, right? I already know my ancestors been through that. So we're not doing that in any industry. But what that does mean is my coffee can't be as cheap as the gas station, right? Because that product been brought through slavery, if we being honest. I can't be as cheap as McDonald's. One, I ain't got the pocketbook that McDonald's got, but two, even if I did, to cover my logistics and buy in bulk, it still would be more expensive because we paying people what they deserve. Again, $500 billion, black people getting less than 1%, right? That's how the rest of the coffee in the world operates. If we want to change that, then that means people gonna have to pay a little bit more. But the question is, who's gonna pay more, right? If I can find a way creatively for people who have values and access and funds to see value in my neighbors and see us as stakeholders and not just as nuisances, then you're investing in us by paying more, and you're investing in our own ability to enjoy the fruit of our labor, because we do deserve to enjoy the fruit of our labor. Amen. So if we can create a business model that works like that, which is very complicated, we can break it down at a different point, but I think it starts with curiosity, and it works for us. It might not work for your business model. It might not work for your industry. But if we start asking questions, it's not God's will that anyone should seek him and not find him. If we are seeking righteousness and justice, God will provide the means to find that, but we got to be curious enough, right, and have enough faith to be able to start looking at what things could work like. And so that means, hey, I might have to work a little harder to train my baristas, because my baristas ain't never done coffee before. I'm not hiring, the kid with the purple hair at the shop downtown to come work in my coffee shop necessarily. I'm hiring my neighbor, the kid I've been mentoring since 5th grade, Omarion, right? He was our first barista. And he learned, he was in the house bagging up coffee with us when our company went viral in 2020. And now he's graduated and working on getting his degree or getting certified as a fire. I don't know what it was called when you become a firefighter, but he's trying to be a firefighter, you know what I'm saying? So he's in school, EMT school. And so I had to train him. It took more time. But then if I'm taking more time with him, that gives me more content, because now I can record that. Now that gives me opportunities to be creative. We can create merchandise with the phrases and the words that we share with each other to teach each other. We can take what I taught him and turn it into a virtual curriculum and then license that curriculum to other people who don't know and want. So all these things start happening when we take the time to be curious, right? And there are things, there's a lot of money and food left on the table, right? There's a lot of fabric on the cutting floor, because we're just taking the models that our masters have given us. Not the master, amen, but the earthly false prophets, the things that they've given us, we're just taking them and saying, well, this is how this industry works. It don't have to work like that, though. And if we look at history, specifically with the things and I'll talk about this at a later point, but we spend a lot of time learning and studying with indigenous African people in Ethiopia about their perspective on how coffee should work and their philosophy and the way they've built their society for 2,000 years. And what I've learned is what we're doing now is actually new, right? This extractive, harmful, individualistic, hyper-individualistic way that we approach my industry and so many other industries, this is new. This is not what Moses and them was doing. This is not what Abraham and them was doing, right? This is not what Ananias and Sapphira even was doing. This is something that is a new creation, and it's not necessarily good for us. And if we're curious enough, not just about our communities, but about our histories, the histories that God gave us, then we find that there are business practices and philosophies attached to those that actually can be extremely profitable in the industry as it is today.
Thank you, brother. Real quick, just want to remind folks that if you have questions, please raise those so that we can get those in time to possibly answer some of those. So please raise your hand, raise your card. If you have questions, if you need a card, raise your hand and someone will get one to you. This next question is for you, Ms. Vivian. How can the assessment and valuation of properties be leveraged as a tool for promoting equitable development and ensuring that communities, especially those predominantly Black and working class, receive fair and just allocation of resources?
So that was a two-part question as I thought about it when I received this. First, the assessment and valuation of property can be leveraged as a tool for promoting equitable development. First, you want to give, I think, to promote equitable development, you should give property owners who are investing in your community, give them incentivization in reference to incentivize property owners, let's put it that way. If they're doing things in your community and promoting and investing in your community, we should incentivize them, not penalize them. You know, if you improve your property, of course, as the assessor of property, we have to come out there and see how you've improved the property. Your property is now more valuable. But in places like Philadelphia, if you were to do no more than $25,000 of improvement in your property, you're not taxed on that. That has to come from the state of Tennessee, of course, because what some people do not know, my office as the assessor of property is not governed by the mayor. It's not governed by the Metro Council. It's governed by the state of Tennessee and state laws, the Tennessee General Assembly. We just can't willy-nilly just throw a value out there without being a basis of the tax, being a basis of the sales approach, the cost approach, or the income approach. It follows a process. So we just can't do what we want to do. We have to follow the process. But in that process, of course, there are ways that the assessment can help to be able to bring about a leveraging in the community. Another way to bring about a leveraging in the community, as I stated earlier, God ain't making no more land. So you can put together and do things like a land trust. That land trust is something that's creative where people come together, that you have the building on the land, but you all have the building, but everyone that is on that property owns the land together. That means you have it together in a group going forward, where you can do things like investments, where you can do things such as home ownership, or being a rentalship for that matter. One of them that has come to our attention is called the Limited Equity Co-op. Our office has just been introduced to this. It's a novice idea. Not many of them are in Tennessee, about 3, but I wanted to say the definition so I don't mess it up. A limited equity cooperative is a home ownership model in which residents purchase a share in the development. You purchase a share in the development. That's the building, okay? You purchase a share in the development rather than an individual unit, and commit to resell your share at a price determined by a formula. That way, you don't have to worry about John next door who sold his property for $400,000, and we're having to use the sales approach in order to arrive at the value of your property. So you have an agreement on the front end to sell that property at an affordable price later on. That's how you leverage your assessment. That's how you leverage that assessment that can come down your way and be able to benefit in your community. Another part of this question, it also states as a tool for promoting equitable development. We just talked about that. And as a tool to ensure that communities, especially our community, black community, receive a fair and just allocation of resources. To receive a fair and just allocation of resources, Jamal and my brother right here just talked about it. You got to speak up, you got to speak out, and you got to be involved. They said if you're not at the table, then you may be on the menu. Well, you don't want to be on the menu. Be at the table, be involved. Know what is the plan of Nashville. Know the process before you critique the process, because then you'll learn something from it. So I want to say, in using assessment and evaluation of properties as a leverage to ensure that the black communities receive fair and just allocation of resources, one thing in our office, that every office of an assessor of property, you have to remove racial biases. So as the assessor, when you're talking about the assessment, sometimes when you have a fee appraiser who's coming out there to value your property, they don't want to value you at the value that you are. They want to undervalue you. When in fact, your property is worth $400,000. It is worth $500,000. There was a story on the news that talked about how a fee appraiser, which is not what we are, fee appraiser and mass appraiser are two different things, but we do the same job, valuing real property, valuing personality. But this fee appraiser went out to this home of a person who was African American. They wanted to sell their home. The fee appraiser was white. The homeowner was black. When the fee appraiser finished the valuation, their value was much less than their neighbors. Predominantly their neighbors were white. They began to be concerned, like, how is this possible? Our house is 3,000 square feet. It's brick. It's got, it's got two garages, got a fireplace. I have all the amenities. And how in the world is my property worth less than my neighbors? So they decided to do something, and that was remove all of the items in their home to make sure that no one knew what color that they are. And they invited another fee appraiser to come out to do a valuation. Fee appraisers make about $700 for a residence. I used to do it. It was $500 a resident one time. But $700 a residence. So they had the gentleman come out, and guess how much their home was valued? You can guess, can't you? Mm-hmm. It was right in the range, because in valuation, it's a range. You can have a pinpoint of a value, but you can also be within the range. It was right within the range of the other homes in the neighborhood. So in that sense, you leverage the assessment of your property to ensure that you're getting a fair value. You do something about it. So which is one of the reasons in mass appraisal, which is what we do, we want to make sure you tell us what we have missed, if we've missed anything. Mass appraisal is to take 274,000 parcels and give them the value of the property. And when you do that, some will be highs, some may be the middle, some will be lows. But we want you to come and talk to us. We may not know about that fire that happened in your home, where you may have not paid the insurance and it lapsed or what have you. Once we know about those type of things in your home, we're going to do our due diligence, come out, and we will adjust it appropriately. Which I'll say right now, if you had any damages in the December 9th storm, we need to know about it. We're going to come out, because as of 1/1, your property was damaged. We're going to reduce that value because you are now have a damaged real property. And of course, all of the personalities that's in your office, of course, we don't do that on residential, but nonetheless, we want to make sure that we come out and observe your property and do visual inspection and then value it accordingly. But that's how you leverage the assessment and to ensure that you have the resources that are allocated in your community. Know your worth.
Thank you, Ms. Vivian. This next question is for Jamel. And Jamel, can you just answer this question in 60 seconds in the interest of time, please?
Will do.
As a community organizer, your work involves mobilizing and building power and altering the people's relationship to power. How do you see the role of organizing for a people's budget in influencing local policies and initiatives related to public dollars? And how can it contribute to building more resource communities across Tennessee?
Yeah, so I see myself as like as a community organizer, especially around our People's Budget campaign. I see myself as a teacher, someone who is supposed to look at very complex issues and break them down so that everyday people can understand. A power sharer. So when it comes to things like the budget and when finding out information, it's also important to make everyday people understand that we can read the budget. We can do that, but we have to do it collectively together, right? Everybody has a piece of the solution. It's just up to us to bring it together. I'll give you a real quick example. So if you look at our local spending dollars from 1977 to 2017, we spent around $5 billion on housing, $1 billion on on health care, $1 billion on public health, $1 billion on public health. But we spent over $9 billion on policing and jailing in black communities. So when you really zoom out to local dollars, you see this why we have a housing issue in Nashville, why our communities are not healthy and have low investment in public health, okay? The second one, and if I could bring it to now with an example, right now for the past year and a half, we've been really struggling with city council on the expansion of surveillance. People know about the license plate reader thing that happened last year where city council had over 8 bills trying to put license plate readers in what they call highly populated areas, which translate to black and brown communities. Now we are looking to expand the network through what they call FUSIS, which will essentially upload and connect every single camera that you see, including Ring cameras, to a direct service that goes directly into the police. What that means is, for my sci-fi nerds, is that they turned on Skynet, right? That's what that means, right? That they have the ability to surveil us at all times. And we are spending our dollars on surveillance, right? And so what we need to do is we need to talk about that and also why is that happening, who is making that happen, and how we can divert some of those dollars into the things that we know make our community safe.
Thanks, Jamel. So this last question, again, can y'all keep it to 60 seconds so we can see if we can get at least one or two questions from the audience. What collective actions and collaborative efforts do you envision for our community moving forward? And how can each of us contribute to that collective vision?
I'll go first. We have, next month, we talked about this, we have the Black Nashville Assembly, we have our People's Movement Assemblies where we start building, really diving deep into some of these questions and start building out solutions and action plans and actualizing some of those things. We also moving into our People's Budget campaign, which any one of you all could sign on to, where we are going to break down the proposal budget and also talk about where do we want our dollars go and action plan around that too. Also, we have our city council dinners where if you want to come break bread and you want to learn about what's happening at city council, also just build with some folks that are also interested in those things. We have that too at the Black Nashville Assembly. So a really short answer to that is come together, build, because all of these things can be solved, but they will be solved as a consequence to our unity as Black Tennesseans.
The collective actions and the collaborative efforts that I envision for the community is to continue to educate you. What I do is not something that should be private. Before me, it was private. You didn't know what the assessor did, pretty much, except doing a reappraisal year, and they got out and talked about what it meant to do a reappraisal. I'm of the opinion that you don't lean not to your own understanding. My job is to educate you, which is why we have done more than 250 outreach presentations, and it's almost like we do it on the aspect of when two come together, the angels will rejoice. I can see you in the grocery store. I'm going to educate you. I'm not going to tell you call me on Monday. I'm not going to say here's my number, give me a call. Or I'm not going to say I'll call you. We're going to talk right then because that's when you that's when you are available, and I'm meeting you where you are. So educating the masses is so very important. And you can't stop. You have to keep educating people. That revolving door go around and around and around. Because you know what? One day you're renting a house, and next moment you're a homeowner. One day you're a homeowner, and the next day you may be on disability. So when I say that, I'm talking about educating you about how you can stay in your home to be able to get assistance through the tax freeze, tax relief, and tax deferral program. Some of these programs are not talked about a lot. I applaud Trustee Gilmore. She's taken the reign in order to educate folks on the tax freeze and tax relief program. But before she got there, my office, recognizing where values were going based on the economy and you and your behavior of how you were buying and selling, we got out front and began to educate NOAA. We brought them in. So I'm still talking about what I envisioned for the collaboration and to come together for my community, educating you, empowering you. So we got out front to educate people about the tax freeze and tax relief program. For the first time that I'm aware of in Davidson County history, the lines were outside the door. The trustee's office didn't close till 9. And my people who were in customer service was serving coffee. We didn't have your coffee, brother. We were serving coffee and peanut butter crackers and things like that to elderly people who would not move because they wanted to get on the tax freeze program and didn't know about it. That's everybody's job. That's not just a trustee's job. It's every one of you here. You got a parent at home that has aged in place. Go tell them about the program. You have a parent at home that owns a property, their home or business. Tell them they can appeal your value now. We don't take it personal. It's your right. So educating you will always be my first priority so that you are empowered to make informed decisions about one of the biggest purchases you'll make in your life. That is building a home, buying a home, or establishing a business. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vivian. Go ahead, Bart. Do you want to answer that, Bart, real quick?
I'm gonna look at this clock because my dad was a preacher and my mom was a teacher, so we talk a lot. I would say the way I envision us collaborating is to really believe the fact that we deserve to enjoy the fruit of our labor, and to be audacious enough to take the step to actually begin the process of owning that, because if we don't, everybody else will. And when I talk about coffee being this huge industry, what we find out is that if we show up as we are, no sugar, no cream needed, that it actually is doper than what's presently offered in the market. And not just with black folks. Like, folks love it globally. And I'm like, okay, so if we're audacious enough, because we spend $300 billion a year as black Americans. So we have the spending power to be able to reclaim and access industries that are birthed from us. But if we don't choose to aim our genius at that target, it's gonna be left unused by us. So if we could do this together, I would love to see a multitude of us moving into industries that have been ignored by us, or maybe that we've been forced out of, and choose to invest with each other in that. So what we're doing this last year, we raised about $250,000 for a private raise with a few investors. And this year we're opening that up to our community where you could put $100 down and get a profit share back on what we're doing. And what I'm most excited about is like the farmers who work with us, the people in my community who live next to me, being able to take advantage of what should have already been ours together. Like, we've been able to do this as a company, as a movement, and with the few investors that came on last year. But I'm like, I see us doing this together as a movement, not just as people in my community, in my neighborhood, not just as Memphians, not just as people in Tennessee, but globally, us taking this joint back and really making coffee black again. That's what I see. It's audacious, but I believe it's possible. And I think the impact we're gonna be able to make is gonna be crazy. It's already been crazy, but like seeing that to me is what I feel. I would love to see like, oh, see, I'm going long. I told you I was gonna go long, man. But I would love to, because I think there's so many beautiful things about each black community just in the state of Tennessee, and oftentimes those things are invisible because of the sugar and cream, right? And if we could create spaces in our communities where we could really empower ourselves, make profit from this thing that comes from our ancestors and from our cousins across the board, like, I think there's so much we could do. I'm investing right now. Oh, say no more. I'm gonna see you at the table. Amen. All right, I'm out. All right. You got some questions?
Thank you so much. We have time for, a few questions. We have a question for each panelist. Please keep it to 60 seconds. I want to just make sure we're going to go like 5 minutes over, and then we're going to have y'all out at 3:05. That sound good? Wonderful. So I want to start with my friend Jamel. There's been a question around reparations, and when we talk about a people's budget and we talk about public tax dollars, can you talk a little bit about what reparations may mean in that context?
Yeah, so oftentimes we pigeonhole reparations to only mean a check, and we don't look at reparations as a complete overhaul of what we got going on. The investment is one part of reparations, but an extremely large part of reparations is to get the institution to stop harming black folks. So when it comes to reparations, I think we need to talk about what does not only financial repair look like, not only how we do things like guaranteed basic incomes, not only how we actually solve the economic gap that black folks, working class folks, brown folks are experiencing and continue to experience, but how do we, a part of reparations also, how do we make sure that institutions like prisons, jails, policing, doesn't continuously affect black folks where we are being policed and jailed at alarmingly high rates as black Tennesseans?
So thank you for being speedy, friend. We'll start with Assessor Property, Ms. Vivian Wilhoit. Can you tell us what does it mean to sell access to your property?
What I stated earlier, can I stand up? Yeah. I've been sitting down all day. Besides, I'm 4 feet 11, and I want to make sure that the Reverend who's leaving right now know how tall I am. So when I said access to property, I'm saying you're letting someone use your property. Kids walk in the back of my yard to go over to the pool. I give them access. My husband like went and say, "Hey, boy, get out my yard." But my point is that you're given that access to property by serving and providing what is called a 99-year lease. There's property right here in this city that's on 99-year lease. The person who owns it still owns it, but they allow for the developer to build on it, use it, pay the taxes, and you pay me an amount of money that I will have for the day, and then you pay for that rent to use that property for years and years and years. In the meantime, you may have passed on, but your children are still living, so that creates generational wealth. That is what access to property means. That's what I mean by that.
Oh, thank you so much for that explanation. That's extremely helpful. And then we have one more, and we have a question for you. There's a kind of practical question again. How do you afford, literally and figuratively, the time to innovate within the coffee business?
I got a timer on my watch. All right, it's because of my wife. I just married right, you know what I'm saying? When we started the business, I was already coffee curious, I would say. I was already learning and making coffee for my friends and just educating people. But I had been a teacher for like 9 or 10 years, and the school I was working at closed right before COVID. And so I felt like after talking to God that he wanted me to take the next step, but that meant my wife had to choose to have a job. And I always tell my wife, you never have to work. If you want to work, you can. But at any point where you feel like you don't want to, I got you. And she chose to get a job so that I could build. And I think that's, even if you're not married, being able to be connected enough to community to use the economics we have access to cooperatively is a key step in us being able to go out and take risk. And I think that's, I want to talk about using a black business's role in protesting and being able to fund the bail bond, because I think there's a metaphor there. But I'm gonna just talk to you at the table. Y'all drink your coffee black.
That's good.
And if you're
interested,
in investing, the investment campaign launches in 2 weeks. We'll get your email and send you out access to that if you want to be a part of what we're doing. Appreciate y'all. Y'all keep that coffee black.
Awesome. Thank you so much to Trey. Thank you so much to our panelists. We appreciate y'all. We can invite you to go back into the audience. We're going to wrap up really quickly, but thank you so much to each of you for your participation. We know that it took time out of y'all, of your day. And you know that Vivian is on the campaign trail, so I know that, you know, you took your time out, so I appreciate you. We had Bart come all the way from Memphis, so shout out to him. Yeah, all the way from Memphis. Oh, yeah. Yeah, please get a picture. So as we wrap up, I just want to name, you know, we've done so much amazing work together over the last 4 years, from building a political agenda to really developing over 30 young people to invite them into leadership. And then, and there's so much more work I could talk about, but I just want to name, you know, we're just getting started. There's so much more work we have to do together, and I invite folks, I hope that you've been inspired by the innovation that folks have named, by the education that folks have mentioned that we need to really engage in, and by the invitation, right, to engage in advocacy together. So right now, you know, we have flight crew members who are passing out build flyers. And on there, you can go there, you know, scan that QR code, and I invite y'all to join one of our campaigns and volunteer with us. I invite you to be a member of the Black Nashville Assembly and Southern Movement Committee. You know, we're inviting folks from Hendersonville to Memphis to Chattanooga to Paris, Tennessee to Smyrna, right, and across the state to join us and becoming members and working with us, to increasing political engagement so we can talk to Speaker Sexton as Representative Vincent Dixie mentioned, right? So we can go to the Capitol and be very clear about what our mandate is for our people. And the other thing I want to name is that, you know, you can join the people's budget that Jamel mentioned so that we can organize to get public dollars into our community. We talked about our schools having a shortfall, right? Not having the investments they need. We talked about not having investment in mental health resources, right? And those are policy decisions and a decision that comes down to our budget. But we can organize for our people's budget. So please, you know, again, you can go there, check the QR code, and sign up for one of our campaigns. And then lastly, we had our young people come up here and talk to us about, you know, the Yes to Youth campaign, the campaign to end the school-to-prison pipeline and implement emotional, right, wellness in their schools, extracurricular activities. That takes funding, y'all, right? And those are policy decisions. And so I invite you to join that campaign too. Volunteer for the campaign, sign up. You know, we'll have community meetings and campaign meetings throughout the month. So I invite you to do that. And then please, you know, hold on your calendar our date for February 24th, where we'll have a people moving assemblies, and those questions we couldn't get to today, we'll dig deep there, right? And then we'll use that momentum as we go into the people's budget, as we go into really working and organize for the Yes to Youth campaign. But I thank you so much for being here. We had an amazing time. Look at your neighbor, tell them thank you, right, for being a part of changing our community. Thank you so much. I hope you have a beautiful day.